I'm Rachel Madel from Talking with Tech.
And I'm Chris Bouguet from Talking with Tech.
We have a podcast dedicated to augmentative and alternative communication, all things related to helping kids with complex communication needs.
If you have a passion for helping people with language disabilities, this is the show for you. Each episode features an interview or a roundtable discussion on a topic related to augmentative communication and helping people with language disabilities.
And we're really passionate about giving practical strategies to clinicians working in the field who are working with children or adults, anything related to AAC.
So you can look us up on iTunes, or you can find us on Facebook. We got a group over there, or check out our website at bit.ly/TWT podcast.
Please join our community of professionals that are working to ensure that everyone can say whatever they want to say, however they want to say it.
The views and opinions expressed during this show do not necessarily reflect the policy
or position of any affiliated workplace or employer. The views and opinions of the show do not constitute recommendations for therapy. Please
contact a licensed SLP for individual consult on your situation.
Please listen carefully.
What is communication?
An essential behavior of life. We have the both blessing and responsibility of trying to foster another.
It's transmitting a thought from one person to another.
It's the strongest way for two people to convey information to each other.
The back and forth between two people.
Communication is a lifeline.
Just connection with other people.
Connecting people in terms of ideas or thoughts or needs.
Draws us out of ourselves, draws us into that relationship, builds up our families. Without it, we'd be lost.
Whatever it is that we do to express intent and achieve an impact.
Communication is the ability to express your needs, wants, frustrations, and desires to anyone that you feel needs to have that information.
Welcome to Speech Science, episode number 121. We are proud members of the Exceptional Podcast Network. I almost forgot what network we're part of. I'm Matt Hott, joined, as always, but not in Kentucky this week, Michelle Wintering.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Michelle. And all the way out in Pennsylvania, near the former hotspot of COVID, Michael McLeod.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm good, guys.
The hotspot just keeps moving.
It does. It just transitions.
I think there's multiple hotspots at this point. So,
on today's show, what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how does COVID and the return to schools or virtual schools affect CFYs and externships, grad students. I forgot where I was going with that. And also on the second part of the show, we're going to talk about what does that look like in your clinic or in your therapy room. But of course, we always like to hear from you. So head over to our website, speechsciencepodcast.com. You can email us, speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com, or give us a phone call or text message, 614-681-1798. And of course, on the social medias, it's hashtag SSPOD. We've also got the hashtag SSPOD due process and hashtag SSPOD shoutouts to look forward to. But let's start off like we always do. I will start and let you guys know how my week has been. Right before the show started, I found out that I am 0.05 credits short of an ASHA ACE award.
It's true, he did.
So, right, Mike and I were talking, and I was like,
he's not lying.
I am this close. So after this show, I am going to take a 1-hour online course at either MedBridge or speechpathology.com and go get that ACE award so I can have that near my name.
Get that award.
Yeah, I need some awards behind my name. But besides that, built some bookshelves, picked cucumbers out of my garden for the first time, and I had red strawberries growing in my garden. I've become an old man with my garden.
I love this. I want your garden.
You've been an old man, bro.
Right? But no, I've got cucumbers growing. My 7-year-old loves the cucumbers. He ate them with like a little bit of ranch. I think we did right because neither of my boys like pop. And my oldest loves salads, veggie pizzas, and cucumbers. So that was my week in a nutshell. Mike, how was yours?
It's been good overall. This was the week where in my area they've announced that a lot of districts will be fully online to start school. So a lot of parents freaking out around in my area because they absolutely hate the virtual program because they see firsthand how hard it is to be a teacher and how hard it is to work with kids. It's quite the coincidence. But yeah, that's pretty much been going on here. Slowly going back into the clinic, still doing lots of teletherapy. I've been chatting with lots of SLPs online, doing lots of networking and things like that. But yeah, just still zooming.
Right. And Michelle, how has your week been?
A little eventful.
Fill us in.
I will fill you in. When we last recorded, I had let you all know that we were attempting to isolate my son and myself from my husband, who had tested positive for COVID. But shortly after that, just a couple days, I then tested positive because I started having symptoms and got retested. And my son also tested positive. So we were just a house full of positive COVID cases, an empty house full, because as I told you before, our house kids, all of our furniture and possessions, for the most part, other than some limited items, were shipped to Kansas, where we're moving to with the military. And unfortunately, we had to kind of lock down after that to quarantine and, of course, not spread COVID. Thankfully, all of us are recovered at this point and cleared, according to the CDC guidelines, the Army Public Health, who is following us, employee health for me, which, gosh, I mean, there's just so much going on. And I know there's so much we don't know about this virus. I'm just very grateful that my son barely had symptoms. My husband and I had cold flu-like symptoms, each for 2 or 3 days were the worst of it. And for many reasons, I'm just grateful that we weren't more severe cases.
And how is everybody doing now?
We're good. We
on the upswing.
Have officially, like I said, been cleared. So we're allowed to be out in public and all of that. We are moving to Kansas. Our stuff is already there waiting in storage for us.
Yay!
But we're spending a few days just at my family, my parents in Ohio, since we are all cleared before we head to Kansas, and in a house that has furniture and is familiar to my son, which is pretty nice too. And I think he's sick of us. We're probably tired of him in ways, so we all need a few other faces to see. But we're doing well. It's just been a little crazy. I know that there's many people in the country and in the world who are dealing with it much worse than we did. But it makes me realize that I think we knew this, but personal experience always changes that there are more and more people walking around who have no idea that they have this or have had it, or had a very mild case that didn't have the top 3 symptoms. And it can be scary. So I just hope that, we as speech pathologists, I know we'll talk about it more this episode, and just medical providers and school providers, that we can, support each other and support our families and realize that we have to have protocols and plans in place, because it's not if people get it, it's when somebody in our workplace or our community or our neighborhood or our house tests positive for it.
Well, we are glad that you guys are all on the upswing and can continue your move across the country, even though you're moving into another time zone. So that does make us sad. But we are glad, at least I know over here at the Hot House, we are super glad that you guys are doing better.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be kind of glad that it's a little earlier. I have a hard time sometimes when we end up recording late. I'll be in Central Time, so.
And a little peek behind the curtain, like your positive test has kind of made my wife feel a little less anxious about being in the same situation.
Yeah.
And, there's that risk of, are we going to get it? And she was like, hey, she's doing better. Maybe it's not as bad. And I was like, well, I mean, yes, but it could have been. So let's not go and expose ourselves anywhere.
Yeah, but you're right.
It's the 2020 motto: don't expose yourself.
Exactly.
And I do think there is some research. I've had some time to read up on things, and I know they're constantly changing. We're all experiencing the scientific method in real time, because medical professionals keep making hypotheses and disproving them and proving them and whatever else about this virus. But I know there is some research about how much the exposure is, which I think shows the importance of PPE in many situations. And ours, obviously, we're one case study, one small family, but we were exposed in a medical setting at a well child visit for my son. And people were wearing masks, not full other PPE, but there were masks, and that still happened. So I guess what I'm saying is that maybe there is really something to minimizing it.
Mm-hmm. It's just being indoors
where we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. So, nope, that's a good spot to move on. And Michelle, we are glad that that's kind of right. And that leads us to our next part. But before we get there, we want to hear from you. SpeechSciencePodcast.com and email SpeechSciencePodcast@gmail.com. Mike, do you have a shout out this week? If not, I've got a shout out.
Let's go with yours.
All right. So this is just kind of a shout out. This was sent in to us. There is when this drops on the 5th, which is a Tuesday, I guess tomorrow, Hard of Hearing Speechy and Christina Mattinson is doing a free yoga with SLPs. So pretty cool.
Ooh,
The link will be
fun.
below. I did DDP yoga for a while, and I love yoga.
I enjoy it too.
Yeah, that is really cool.
And DDP yoga is like P90X yoga, except right, with the diamond cutter.
Yep.
And but there's not as many crazy.
I have no idea DDP.
Diamond Dallas Page. He was a wrestler.
My bad.
Yeah. DDP. He was the original, man.
Yeah, but no DDP. Sorry.
That was him and Carl Malone.
Yes, but no, DDP yoga is like what a lot of retired athletes are starting to do to try to stay in shape. And I figured that I was at one point an athlete, so I can say that I am now a retired athlete, even if my athletic ability was bowling and rowing, a sport where I could sit or a sport that I could eat in between activity. So
there you go. I like it.
That's what it is. And I don't think we have any SLP due process or SSPOD due processes this week, other than the crushing defeat of reality around us. Right.
Oh, so sad.
No, I know. And that actually leads us to our next conversation. But before we get there, if you want to recognize somebody doing something awesome, that is hashtag SSPOD shout out. And if you want to recognize something that sucks and you want to do it anonymously, you can either email us about it, or if you don't mind attaching your name to it, SSPOD due process is the hashtag. So Michelle, you had sent us a message in the group chat before the show, and you brought up a wonderful topic. What in the world is going to happen to externships and CFY students if we are not in schools this year, or if we move to virtual, or what if we shut down completely again? I think it's a wonderful conversation to have. And just for some background, I did pull up the ASHA externships and the ASHA guide for CFYs, but I'll let you guys kind of start.
Yeah, so I've taken several students at this point within my practice, and we did have one right as COVID hit back in March.
Oh, you did?
Yep, we did have one, and she was able to finish up her hours via teletherapy and all of that. But moving forward, this is going to be a significant issue. I would probably say the vast majority of SLPs really found their externship placements, although I'm sure they were hard and may have been mistreated or whatever, but I'm sure they found their externship placements to be quite possibly the most valuable experience of grad school. You learn a lot of information in the classes, but actually being there and being with a licensed SLP and being within a team and being in an environment and actually seeing students face to face and getting legitimate feedback, that's what builds an SLP. And we've spoken before on this podcast about how there should be more externship experience, and that should be the majority of the grad school experience. And, unless a student is getting legitimate, intensive teletherapy, varied experiences, and really getting a lot out of it based on what the placement is able to give. Colleges are really going to have to scramble these next couple of months to see what they can do to ensure that these students are getting what they need.
And I think you're talking, there's kind of multiple aspects to this. There's the students, the grad students in a grad program at a university right now, because they're talking about them having to do virtual schooling, but then we're also throwing in potentially virtual clinicals. And then if you're talking medical clinicals too, people are trying to cut back, or facilities are trying to cut back on the number of people there at all. So there's places that are just not taking on externs or CFYs when they normally would. So I think I want to hear from some grad students. I've seen some threads and commentaries from grad students and from CFYs coming right out of grad school right now, concerned about that, or trying to last minute find new placements. And I really, really hope that maybe we can get some communication from any listeners who are in that boat, because maybe our community can help connect people too.
So I'm looking up the SLP ASHA CCC standards, and it says that the standard applicant must complete a minimum of 400 clock hours of supervised clinical experience. 25 must be spent in guided clinical observation. 375 must be spent in direct client-patient contact. And then it says at least 325 of the 400 clock hours of supervised clinical experience must be completed while the applicant is enrolled in graduate study in a program accredited. So I'm trying to find out if there's like a minimum amount of hours by ASHA that's in the externship. And I think that's just each school's a little bit different, right?
I think I don't know. I think
I do think it depends on the school where the placements are.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of them kind of have preset. We work with these locations if we're in a bigger city or something else. I know Matt in my program, people that I've talked to, ours was a little more flexible if it met certain requirements, but I think that's because it was a more rural location for the school itself. So people didn't stay local for all their
it was pretty much find out wherever you can go.
Yeah.
Mike, you bring up a really good point. Like before, where I never even thought about it. Like the best part of the clinical experience or the externship, and then the clinical CFY, is getting your head handed to you in a meeting, or learning from the coworkers and learning how to walk
that in-person piece.
Yeah, like I'm remembering, because I didn't have the quote unquote normal externship. Here in Ohio, we had a program called Omni, which was the Ohio Master something initiative, something. And basically it was to get me into school districts that needed SLPs. And my externship was literally a 2-year internship where I was checking in with a supervisor once a week, but the other 4 days a week I was by myself, and I had to learn to navigate the school. But you learn how to interrupt the teacher. You learn how to stand up for yourself. And I'm concerned about these virtual clinicians missing that piece. And we run the risk of graduating students or CFYs that maybe have never been in a clinic in a year or more.
And let's not forget,
and I'm not trying to be doom is doom, but
there's more speech pathology graduate programs now, more than there has ever been in history. So there are so many students right now, and you see it on Facebook. You see it on Speech Pathologists at Large, the SLP group. You see students saying, hey, does anyone know of an externship where I can do teletherapy? Does anyone know of a CFY where I can do teletherapy? They're really stuck between a rock and a hard place, and they're really getting the crappy end of COVID here. But in terms of them getting the experience they need, this is really going to be few and far between. And part of this COVID, sadly enough, is the social distancing. And having one extra body there, one extra person, may not be the best idea for many different places.
Yep.
I have taken on 3 or 4 externs. Mike, how many have you had?
3.
3. Michelle, have you had any?
Unfortunately, no, not with moving around.
My current place says I have to be here for 3 years. And I get it. I think it's more of to know the lay of the land before I take on a student teacher is what they call it, or an extern. But I think even if I was in my 4th year at this new building or district, there's no way I would take on an extern for this school year. I barely understand what I'm supposed to be doing with a potential maybe we'll be in school, but then we may have some kids that are not in school, and then all of a sudden the state might close down. Like, I don't even know how to even take on a student to even bridge that topic.
And not even just externships. I'm sure the vast majority of speech pathology graduate programs are going fully virtual for classes as well. Mm-hmm. And what is that? Mm-hmm. And how many of these programs have clinics on campus that I'm sure are shut down now? And how valuable are those experiences to work with a student on campus down the hall from your classroom, where your teacher is watching you, your professor is watching you, and you get feedback right away? You pretty much need that before you go to an externship. And I would assume the vast majority of college speech and language clinics are closed. And that's another thing that's going to be a major issue. Like, how are these students going to get experience, and who's really going to want that extra body around?
And I mean, again, I'm just going to say, anybody listening who is in that boat, like, let us know what your experience is, because I think there are SLPs who may be in a situation where they could take on, a student or an extern, or could support in some capacity. So
SpeechSciencePodcast.com.
Reach out to us.
SpeechSciencePodcast@gmail.com, or phone call 614-681-1798. The other flip side to that is also the CFY. And like, I'm looking at it's been almost 10 years since I've looked at the CFY. And it says it's a minimum of 1,260 hours and a minimum of 36 weeks of full-time experience, or it's a part-time equivalent. And I remember that when I went through my CFY, I was really spreading out my students. So instead of having a group of 3 or 4, I was having 2 groups of 2. So I could have an hour of therapy time instead of a half hour of therapy time. If a lot of places are moving to this telepractice therapy, I also worry about our CFY students having to extend their CFYs.
Just to get the hours, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember this fall or this past spring, I was doing 3 hours of direct therapy a week. And that was down from 28 or 30. It was down to 3. And my online class of like 10.
Gosh, and I remember well in grad school, though, a patient showed up 10 minutes late for a session, and I only got 30 minutes for that session instead of the 40 I was supposed to get. It's tough. You're doing the micro math to get those hours in.
Well, Michelle, you're right. We want to hear from you, especially if you're in grad school or if you're running a grad program. What are you telling your grad students? SpeechSciencePodcast.com. Email us SpeechSciencePodcast@gmail.com, or phone call text 614-681-1798, or hashtag it up SSPOD. Up around the break, we check in with the Informed SLP, and then we're going to talk about what does your clinic or your school look like coming back from COVID this fall. You're listening to Speech Science.
Hi, I'm Mei-Ling Chan.
And I'm Martin Sibley.
And we are the hosts of the Exceptional Leaders Podcast, where we spotlight high-profile topics and amazing people who are changing the worldview on disability.
Even though we are oceans apart, we are bringing people from all over the world together to discuss inclusion, advocacy, accessibility, and real-life journeys.
So listen to the Exceptional Leaders Podcast to hear the voices and stories from amazing changemakers and be inspired to make a real difference in the world.
This is the story of a very special woman. Just a few knew about her superpowers. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
And now for our regular research review, brought to you by the Informed SLP. The Informed SLP releases a monthly newsletter that brings you plain language reviews of only the newest, most clinically applicable research, keeping you up to date on advances in the field and saving you tons of time. So let's get to it.
So back in 2013, Estes and Hurley conducted a study that investigated whether or not infant-directed prosody enhanced novel object label learning among 28 typically developing 17-month-olds. Make a note that this study is only looking at changes in prosody, not changes in language that may arise in infant-directed speech. The researchers conducted 3 experiments examining novel object label learning in adult-directed speech with 3 distinct tokens of each label, infant-directed speech with 3 distinct tokens of each label, and infant-directed speech without 3 distinct tokens of each label. A recording of the same female speaker was used across all 3 experiments. The infant-directed speech had a higher pitch, greater pitch variation, and longer duration of sounds as compared to the adult-directed speech. And 3 distinct tokens refers to the same word being said, but each time with different pitch contours and durations. They found in experiment number 1 and number 3, infants did not demonstrate learning. Ouch. But in experiment number 2, infants did demonstrate novel object label learning. So infant-directed speech alone wasn't enough for word learning to happen, at least in the lab, but combining it with varying how you say the word each time appears to be part of the secret sauce that helps infants learn new words for new things. What else might infant-directed speech elicit? Immediate infant vocalizations. In a more recent study, Name et al. Found that infant-directed speech elicited more vocalizations from the 3 toddlers when compared to baseline, which was mothers' interactions without motherese. They found that imitation worked well too, which aligns with previous research. So while many of us likely combine exaggerated prosody and varied tokens in infant-directed speech without even thinking about it, it may be worth explicitly discussing and demonstrating the value of it, as well as immediate imitation, with your clients' families.
Thanks for listening to this review. If you're interested in more, come visit us at www.theinformedslp.com. Tell us how you put the research into practice, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at theinformedslp.
Welcome back to Speech Science, episode number 121. I'm Matt Hott, joined by Michael McLeod.
What's up?
And Michelle Wintering.
Hello again.
Hello. All right. So before the break, we were talking about what is our grad students or CFY students going to be doing. And Michelle, your personal experience with this brought up a wonderful point about how do we handle patients in a post-COVID or a current COVID world. And if I can paraphrase you for a second, like your big point was, how do we know, or how can somebody say that you do or don't have COVID? How do you expose or not expose? It's super interesting. And I have no idea. So I'm going to make Mike do it first, because of the 3 of us, he's the only one that runs a clinic. So Mike, under the spotlight of a national media, us,
Okay.
what is your initial reaction?
And I guess, so to clarify the question is, Mike, as a private practitioner, as someone who sees patients, what are your thoughts, or have you thought about what are you going to do when a patient or a family member of a patient is positive and quarantines and recovers? When are you going to bring them back for treatment?
That's a great question. And it's really, I feel like, it's a very small practice that I run, and I think we have very good relationships with all of the families and all of the parents. So obviously I would go about having a very open conversation with the family and talking with them about, if it's an older student. Well, first of all, the way that the clinic is now, with myself working with older students, is a lot of the parents drop off. There's no waiting room, so there's very little face-to-face with the parents. It's pretty much just drop off for the family. So we have a nice system going with space in between to disinfect. But I would just have an open conversation. Of course, I would want to see the negative test myself. Like, you can, send me a screenshot of the negative test or something, but just for peace of mind. But yeah, that's going to be a really difficult thing. And we haven't even begun to see the beginning of this. This is going to be a long-term issue. I'm sure we've all seen something about how there's, we've seen that families are suing districts because of IEPs. We're seeing employees sue their job. This COVID thing is going to be a mess for years to come.
And actually,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't remember if it was the Democrats or the Republicans or somebody, but in one of the bills I read was that they wanted to put in so that a workplace can't be sued if someone gets sick there, which I think kind of makes sense. You don't want your burger franchise going down because someone coughs on a countertop and then somebody comes by and licks the countertop and gets sick. But evidently there was a clause that you could be sued as an employee if you knowingly bring something into work. Right. And I was like, oh, I don't really know if I like that. Sorry, Michelle, I didn't mean to cut you off on that.
No, you're good. I just caught on to something you said, Mike, and because, a month ago, my thought as well is, of course, we would ask someone for a negative test, right, to return to therapy or return to work. And I think that was the guidance from the CDC a month or two ago. But because I've been reading up on a lot of this lately, the new guidance from the CDC, and this is as of the 30th of July, 2020, and could easily change, is that they're recommending a symptom-based and time-passing-based method of clearing people from COVID, not retesting, because I guess they're finding that a lot of people are, I don't know a lot, I'm saying that very loosely. There are people who are being retested and are no longer contagious, and then it's based on testing whatever they swabbed out of their nasal cavity for the reduplicating properties. And I'm going to screw that up, so somebody who knows that chemistry can correct me. But that it's not the contagious shedding of the virus anymore, even if people are testing positive. Now, this is for mild or moderate cases, like people who aren't hospitalized, people like my family, right? Who aren't hospitalized and with severe symptoms and complications. But that the guidance now is 10 or more days since the onset of symptoms, and at least the last 72 hours of that symptom free. And so that left my family about 3 weeks that we were all, locked away. But, and then my understanding is if you have a positive test with no symptoms, they're saying 14 days regardless.
So my question then is, can you deny service to someone that is COVID positive? And the reason I ask that is that for some of us that have worked.
And are you saying a positive test? I mean, because you COVID or had any history of it? Because these are the questions.
Right.
Like,
and let's say you're currently COVID positive. I mean, there
like
are
in your 14-day quarantine.
Yeah, and let's say you're COVID positive, and I was watching on the news today the lady with the double lung transplant. She was on a respirator for 30 some odd days, and still was COVID positive until most recently. But we've got therapists that have never stopped all summer. All three of us have worked all summer. in the middle of this. And we don't know if any of our patients were COVID positive or negative, but, you know, I mean, going forward, is there an ethical violation? I guess my question is, you know, Michelle, you have a young one at home now. You have a future young one. If somebody rolls it, let's say you get a job out in Metropolis with Superman in Kansas, and you're working in a hospital and they say, hey, we need you to gown up and go onto the COVID floor and work with Mr. Smith on dysphagia. Is it ethically okay for you to say, nah, baby, nah, I got to take care of my little ones at home? Or, you know, my big guys at home, like they've got
I've seen
medical condition.
Yeah, and I have seen threads of topics and conversations from speech pathologists about this. And I think right now it's being handled on a case-to-case, employer-to-employee basis of, you know, this SLP team says, oh, this person's pregnant, this person has breathing complications or health issues, and we're not putting them on the COVID floor. Like, we're just not doing it. But that seems a very small, like, grassroots level decision, not an overall, you know, there's not like a greater policy in the city or state, my understanding for that.
And I mean,
or from ASHA.
And I mean, I'll throw it to you, Mike. Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle, go for it.
But I do know, I mean, ASHA does provide some guidance. I'll have to find it on, you know, complicated health issues, or if provider services put you at risk, referring them to someone else or helping them gain that service somewhere else. So I know there is some guidance on that.
And Mike, I'll throw it to you. Like, you know, my question for a private practice would be, is it ethically okay for you to not allow in, you know, someone that's long-term COVID positive, but no symptoms? Maybe they're asymptomatic, but they keep popping up on a test. And is it ethically for you to say, and I'm not saying you would do it or wouldn't do it, but like, you've got to worry about your other clients. You got to worry about yourself.
Exactly. I think I would be more concerned with the ethical responsibility of everybody else compared to the one person. So I would, you know, have that conversation with the person and just, you know, discuss the risk. And it's much more important to make sure that, you know, 5, 6, 7 people are safe as compared to one person getting an hour of therapy.
Well, I just found an article, so maybe you guys are both right, and I'm just chicken little. In the ASHA leader from March 29th, it says, audiologists and SLPs are ethically obliged not to abandon a client. However, the obligation isn't absolute. ASHA's issues an ethics statement on client abandonment states, no clinician is ever ethically required to work in physical danger in order to offer client care. It says, recommends that employees who fall into the following 3 categories may be temporarily excluded from direct patient care responsibilities for suspected and known positive COVID, pregnant, or women who are breastfeeding, immunocompromised employees, and employees 65 and older. If you fall into one of the 3 temporary excluded employee categories, there's a strong basis to assert the hospital is putting you in physical danger by asking you to provide direct care to a suspected and known positive COVID-19 patient. So, well, that makes me feel better.
And so, I mean, that is that's the kind of guidance that as an SLP, you would have to talk to your director of rehab or talk to your supervisor in some capacity and see who can advocate for you if you fall in those categories.
I mean, you have to be prepared to lose a job, though. You don't think so?
I realize that could happen, but that's also, those sort of things should be protected and taken care of under, you know, human resources. But I agree. I mean, that's scary because that's employment, that's our livelihood, that's taking care of our families. But okay, so then also kind of adding to the conversation what you were asking Mike, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, and any of our listeners, is that what, you know, if you have a private practice or you're a clinic and you have to make that decision more than like employee health, right? Like if I was returning to work, which unfortunately I didn't get to wrap up at work because of being quarantined and us moving, but I know the employee health guidelines were tweaking based on the CDC guidelines, but it was at least 14 days, I believe, a negative test. Now, depending where you work, they have different policies, and they may be in line with the CDC. They may be more restrictive than the CDC. And, but like right now, the CDC is not requiring a negative test, not recommending a negative test for someone to return to therapy. So how long do we wait before treating someone on the backside of a mild case, for example? Like if I needed to take my son to therapy right now, when could he return to therapy?
I don't know. I mean, like, so I've been working in home care all summer, and I have no idea if any of my patients are asymptomatic COVID positive, but I've been treating them all like they have been. You know, I mean, the alcohol spray when I leave their homes, I'm wearing my N95 mask. You know, I'm not touching. The only time I touch is when I put on a blood pressure machine and the pulse oximeter on their finger. But other than that, there's no physical contact, but I am within 4 feet of them. I mean,
and I don't have an answer. I think these are the tough questions that I think we're going to deal with, because there's going to be situations where someone could be denied services, 2 months, 3 months after they were positive for COVID. And where do we draw the line? And I don't have an answer. I just think that this is something that's going to be coming up more and more. And I mean, I'm also grateful that I was informed, what are our policies? Because especially small businesses, we're going to have to put into, I say we're, the royal we, SLPs who have their own practice and are making those decisions, or are part of teams for directors of rehabs and of rehab and schools, making decisions about, okay, what if one of our employees does come up positive and is symptomatic? How far back do we have to, and the CDC may have guidelines on this, I don't know. How far back do we need to inform people that they treated that this person tested positive, or a staff that they were exposed? So for example, like we were exposed at a medical clinic, my family, and they backtracked anybody who saw those providers 72 hours before they had symptoms. So they were asymptomatic when we saw them. And I'm grateful that they called us and put us on quarantine, because I didn't have symptoms for another week after that. So I would have been the provider treating patients asymptomatically.
Right.
So I don't have an answer. I guess I'm just saying, I feel like these questions are going to be coming up more and more, and we have to figure them out. And ASHA has to give us guidance, and the CDC and our schools and our hospitals and our clinics. But we've got to kind of get this mindset of, like what you just said, Matt, of treating everyone like it could, taking the precautions as though anyone could have it right now, and coming up with a game plan so that our business doesn't tank, or our patient, client referrals don't tank because we have one positive case somewhere. What are we going to do to respond to it? I'm asking tough questions, guys. I'm sorry.
Sure are.
I don't know, man. Because I'm thinking, as a parent, if my son needed it, I'd want him in the clinic as quickly as possible. But as a therapist, I would want to try to hold that out. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I would feel comfortable treating your son or daughter or whoever, mom, dad, brother, sister, whatever, the moment that they are no longer showing some outward signs. Because, I mean, if we think that this is going to be a virus that maybe stays in for, shingles comes back, I mean, I don't know. Holy cow.
And this just further exemplifies the incredible bravery of all of these frontline workers and these doctors and these nurses. We're talking about, can we treat people after they've recovered? They're literally treating people right as they're getting sick and right as they've just been
in the absolute confirmed contagious state.
100%. And especially in the very beginning when they were using garbage bags as PPE. So let's remember that and give a big shout out to our healthcare heroes out there.
Heck yeah, yes. And all those SLPs that are in those front lines treating those recent current positive cases in hospital, the severe cases.
Want to hear from you. I'm going to put it back onto the listeners. Head to our website, speechsciencepodcast.com. Email us speechsciencepodcast@gmail.com and give us a phone call, 614-681-1798. I am going to throw you guys a little bit of a curveball because we do have an ASHA spotlight. And what we try to do each week is we do try to shine some positive light on something that ASHA is doing. And the positive that ASHA is doing, did you guys know they released a YouTube video explaining critical care on the road to recovery from COVID-19?
Yeah, it was actually very well done.
Yeah, only 156 people have seen this thing.
Are you serious?
100%.
Wait, on YouTube?
What is it?
On
Say it
YouTube.
again.
Well, because do you know why that is though?
No.
Because people have watched it on other platforms.
Have they?
You're seeing the YouTube only view.
Yeah, it has 12 up likes.
I would say 99% of people watched it. I myself watch it on Facebook.
See, I didn't even see it on Facebook. It was literally in my email troller, it said ASHA COVID.
I've never been to the ASHA YouTube channel.
I haven't seen that either.
I just watched.
I haven't been to their YouTube channel either.
There's no sound. I mean, yeah, let's look at the ASHA YouTube channel.
I only watched Dr. Pimple Popper, and that's it.
Oh, ASHA YouTube channel says they have 11,000 subscribers. So there you go. Anywho, that wraps up our show this week. Let's end the show like we always do. Let's figure out something cool that we're doing this next week. And I've got you all beat. So do you want me to go first or second or third?
First.
Go for it.
The day that this drops, the Columbus Dispatch from Columbus, Ohio, the newspaper is interviewing me about mask usage for school-based SLPs in the state of Ohio.
Oh,
boom! I'm big timing, y'all.
How'd you get that gig?
No one else wanted it at OSLA. No. So they sent an email that said, hey, someone from the dispatch wants to talk to somebody in the schools about using clear masks in the school district. And I'm the school-based I'm the school's professional practice rep for Ohio. So I reached down and then now I've got an interview at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. So that is what I'm looking forward to this week.
Matt.
Michelle, I know what you're doing this week, but tell everybody else. What are you looking forward to this week?
I'm happy to be in a house that has furniture
There
and to be allowed out in public again and to not be sick. So actually we made a reservation for the Columbus Zoo, speaking of Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
Because they are limiting numbers and, limited family groups for hours you can visit the zoo right now, and I can't wait to take James there because he loves animals. And he's gonna freak out.
Awesome. And Mike, what are you doing this week?
I am going to play 2 rounds of golf. I'm playing golf tomorrow, and I'm playing golf on Saturday. I'm super excited.
That's good social distancing.
Yeah. I'm just starting. I'm still really, really bad, and I'm starting to show slight signs of improvement, which makes me want to continue to play. So I'll need everyone to wish me luck because I'm gonna need every bit of it.
Oh, I
Good
do have
luck.
to tell you guys, only because this has been like a nice reprieve from hearing kids music kind of thing for my 2-year-old son. He has been on this recent kick of asking for what he calls church music. And we didn't teach him this. We go to church but he heard me playing a video on my phone once, and it was a hymn of some kind, like an old church hymn.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Church music, I hear it." And so I played it for him, and then he was asking for it again. And so now instead of playing Baby Shark equivalent, I'm not a huge fan of that song, but a bunch of little nursery rhymes. He's been asking for church music, so we've been playing music from the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and other hymn choirs, and he loves it. And he goes, "Church music, church music."
Play him some Godspell Jesus Christ Superstar. Not gospel
I do
music.
like that one.
Yeah, but that's fun.
I do like that one.
Our intro music today was Please Listen Carefully by Jazar. It's licensed under an attribution and share alike license. Our bump music is the County Fair Rock copyright of John Deku. Find his music at soundcloud.com/dirtdogmusic. The Informed SLP and our closing music, At the Count by Broke for Free and Slow Burn by Kevin MacLeod, both licensed under a Creative Commons attribution license. In the immortal words of Janice Wright, always be a willow. The oak looks strong, but it will crack under pressure. The willow will return to form. For Willow's Michael McLeod and Michelle Wintering, I'm Matt Hott. Until next week, so long, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Sweet.
This has been an Exceptional Podcast Network production. Speech Science is edited and produced by MWH Production. Please follow Speech Science on Twitter at Speech Science PC and like our page on Facebook. For more original podcasts, please visit exceptionaled.com and rate and subscribe to our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts.